Hollywood glitters on the surface, but in the shadows lurked a far deadlier story. Fame didn't buy protection, and even the most glamorous stars couldn't escape the mob's reach. Behind the red carpets and flashing cameras, secrets, debts, and whispers of betrayal sealed their fates. These are 10 chilling cases where celebrity collided with the mob, and only one side ever walked away. In the glittering world of 1930s Hollywood, Thelma Todd was known as the Ice Cream Blonde, a radiant actress whose comedic timing and beauty made her one of the era's most bankable stars. Off-screen, she ran the famous Thelma Todd's Sidewalk Cafe in Pacific Palisades, a hotspot that attracted everyone from A-list celebrities to underworld figures. But that popularity also drew dangerous attention. On a cold December morning in 1935, Thelma was found slumped behind the wheel of her car inside her garage. The engine was running, and the official cause was carbon monoxide poisoning. Authorities quickly labeled it accidental. Perhaps she was tired after a long night and simply nodded off, but few in Hollywood bought that explanation. Rumors swirled that her cafe had made her enemies in organized crime. Some said mob figures wanted control of the profitable business, and silencing her was the easiest way. Others whispered about her turbulent relationship with her lover and business partner, director Roland West, and speculated whether he played a role under pressure from shadowy associates. What made her death so haunting was its ambiguity. To this day, historians and crime writers debate whether Thelma was a victim of a tragic accident, a jealous lover, or the mob's heavy hand. One thing is certain: her glamorous career ended not in the spotlight, but in a garage filled with smoke, and the unanswered questions left behind still linger like a ghost over old Hollywood. Jean Spangler wasn't yet a household name, but by 1949 she was on the verge of becoming one. The striking brunette had danced in films alongside icons like Kirk Douglas and Robert Cummings, and friends said she was destined for stardom. But one October evening, Jean left her Los Angeles home, telling her sister she had a late-night film shoot. She never returned. 2 days later, her purse was discovered in Griffith Park. Inside was a cryptic note addressed to a Kirk, reading, "Can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work out best this way while Mother is away." Rumors immediately exploded. Some pointed to Kirk Douglas, though he denied involvement and police cleared him. Others dug deeper, tying Jean's disappearance to known mob associate Davy Ogle, who vanished around the same time. Whispers spread that Ogle had fled the country and taken Jean with him, or worse, silenced her to protect secrets. The case only grew stranger. Witnesses claimed to have seen her in Palm Springs after her disappearance, but nothing concrete ever surfaced. No body was found, no charges filed, and Jean's promising career ended in silence. Hollywood buzzed with theories. Was she pregnant and seeking a dangerous backroom procedure? Did she cross the wrong people in Mickey Cohen's underworld circle? Or was she simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? Jean Spangler remains one of Tinseltown's most enduring mysteries, a rising star who walked into the night and was swallowed by the shadows of the mob. In Europe, few figures were as brilliant or as controversial as Pier Paolo Pasolini, a celebrated Italian filmmaker, poet, and intellectual. His works like Accaton and Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, challenged authority, exposed hypocrisy, and earned him enemies in both politics and organized crime. Pasolini was never afraid to confront the darkest parts of society, but that boldness would ultimately cost him his life. On the night of November 2, 1975, Pasolini's battered body was discovered at a desolate beach in Ostia, outside Rome. He had been beaten savagely, run over with his own car, and left unrecognizable. Authorities quickly arrested a teenage hustler named Pino Pelosi, who confessed to the killing. The case seemed closed until doubts began to surface. Pasolini had spent years investigating corruption, including alleged Mafia links to Italy's ruling class. Many suspected he hadn't been killed in a random scuffle, but silenced for what he knew. Pelosi later recanted, claiming others, men connected to organized crime, were present that night and forced him to take the blame. Theories multiplied. Was Pasolini murdered, for his outspoken political views? Was it a message from the Mafia, warning others not to dig too deep? Or was it a brutal mix of both? Decades later, his death remains one of Italy's most haunting mysteries. Pasolini's voice may have been silenced, but the shadow of the mob lingers over his final night, a reminder that sometimes art itself can be dangerous enough to kill. For wrestling fans in the 1980s, Dino Bravo was unforgettable. Billed as the Canadian strongman, he packed arenas with his brute strength and larger-than-life persona. But when the cheers faded and his in-ring career ended, Bravo faced the same challenge as many retired athletes: how to keep the money flowing. The path he chose led straight into the mob's grip. By the early 1990s, Bravo had become entangled in a cigarette smuggling ring tied to the Montreal Mafia. At first, it seemed like easy money, profitable, low profile, and controlled by powerful crime families. But greed and turf wars made the business dangerous. Rumors spread that Bravo had taken more than his share or knew too much about the bosses pulling the strings. On March 10, 1993, his life ended violently. Bravo was found slumped in his home, shot 17 times. The sheer brutality of the attack left no doubt. It was an execution. Police never caught the killers, but investigators and friends alike pointed to one conclusion: this was a mob hit carried out to silence or punish him. Fans were stunned. A man who once thrilled crowds with feats of strength had been reduced to a casualty of organized crime. For Montreal, it was another reminder of the Mafia's reach. For the wrestling world, it was a chilling lesson. Behind the glitter of fame, one bad deal with the mob could make even the strongest man fall. In Sicily, during the 1970s, one young man dared to do what few others would: openly mock the Mafia. Peppino Impastato, a charismatic radio host, used his platform to expose corruption and ridicule the bosses who controlled his hometown. His satirical broadcasts turned him into a local celebrity, admired by youth who saw him as fearless and despised by mobsters who saw him as a threat. But his defiance came at a deadly cost. On May 9, 1978, Peppino's body was found near train tracks, blown apart by explosives. At first, authorities called it an accident or even tried to label it a terrorist act. But locals knew better. For years, whispers circulated that the Mafia had silenced him for his outspokenness. It took decades for the truth to come out. Investigations eventually confirmed what many suspected all along: Impastato was murdered by the Cosa Nostra. In 2002, powerful boss Gaetano Badalamenti was convicted of ordering the hit, finally exposing the crime for what it was. Peppino's death shocked Italy. He wasn't a gangster or politician. He was a young broadcaster who believed words could fight bullets. His story became legendary, inspiring books, films, and movements against organized crime. The Mafia wanted to erase him, but instead, they turned him into a symbol. Even in death, Peppino Impastato proved that a voice, once brave enough, could echo louder than fear. By the early 1980s, Giuseppe "Pippo" Fava was more than just a journalist. He was a cultural force in Sicily. A playwright, novelist, and the fearless founder of the magazine I Siciliani, he became famous for publicly naming names, exposing the deep ties between the Mafia, politicians, and businessmen. His writing gave him celebrity status in Italy, but it also painted a target on his back. Fava refused to stay silent. In interviews and editorials, he warned that Cosa Nostra wasn't just a criminal syndicate. It was embedded in Sicily's very institutions. He called out corrupt bankers, crooked officials, and even hinted at collusion in Rome. The Mafia could tolerate many things, but not someone with Fava's influence shining a spotlight on their secrets. On January 5, 1984, the price of his courage became clear. Outside a theater in Catania, as he went to pick up his granddaughter, Fava was ambushed and shot 5 times. He died instantly. Authorities at first hesitated to pursue the Mafia angle, but evidence and public outrage made the truth undeniable. Years later, Notorious boss Nito Santapaula and several associates were convicted for ordering his assassination. Fava's death shook Italy. He wasn't a gangster or politician. He was a celebrated writer whose pen had become more dangerous than a gun. The Mafia killed him to silence his voice, but instead, his legacy only grew stronger. To this day, Pippo Fava is remembered as both a cultural icon and a martyr in the fight against organized crime. In the mid-1980s, Giancarlo Siani was one of Italy's rising stars in journalism. At just 26 years old, he worked for Il Mattino in Naples, covering the bloody wars of the Camorra, the Neapolitan branch of the Mafia. With a boyish smile and a notebook always in hand, Siani seemed more like a student than a threat. But his reporting cut deep, exposing alliances, betrayals, and money trails the bosses wanted hidden. Siani's fame grew as his articles pulled back the curtain on the Camorra's grip over Naples. He revealed connections between gangsters and powerful politicians, a boldness that made him both respected and feared. His words embarrassed men who thrived on intimidation, and soon he became too visible for his own safety. On the night of September 23, 1985, Giancarlo parked his small Citroen outside his apartment. He never made it inside. Two hitmen on a motorcycle pulled up and opened fire, killing him instantly. Naples awoke to the shocking reality that the Mafia wasn't just silencing rival mobsters, it was executing journalists. The murder sent shockwaves through Italy. Here was a young man barely beginning his career, murdered for daring to tell the truth. Later investigations confirmed that his assassination was ordered by Camorra bosses furious at his reporting. Giancarlo Siani's death became a turning point, a chilling warning that in the war against organized crime, even the pen could be marked for death. By the late 1980s, Mauro Rostagno had become a familiar face in Sicily. A sociologist, activist, and charismatic television host, he used his nightly broadcasts to expose the Mafia's grip on everyday life. With sharp wit and a confident presence, Rostagno turned local TV into a platform for truth-telling, mocking mobsters on air and shining a light on their political connections. His popularity made him a celebrity in his own right, one who wasn't afraid to laugh at the men everyone else feared. But the Mafia doesn't take kindly to ridicule. Rostagno's investigations into drug trafficking and corruption struck too close to home. He wasn't just embarrassing them, he was unraveling the networks that kept them powerful. Friends warned him to be careful, but Mauro brushed off the danger. "If we don't speak," he said, "who will?" On the night of September 26, 1988, Rostagno was driving back to his home near Trapani when gunmen ambushed his car. He was shot dead, left slumped behind the wheel. For years, the murder remained clouded in speculation, but in 2014, after a lengthy investigation, two Mafia bosses, Vincenzo Virga and Salvatore Mazzara, were convicted of ordering and carrying out the hit. Rostagno's death silenced a brave voice, but it also underscored the Mafia's fear of public scrutiny. They could control businesses, politicians, even judges, but one popular TV host armed with the truth had them reaching for their guns. In the late 1970s, Mario Francese was one of Sicily's most respected crime reporters. Working for Giornale di Sicilia, he gained national recognition for his fearless investigations into the Cosa Nostra. Unlike many journalists who skirted around details, Francese named names. He exposed Mafia bosses like Toto Riina and Giovanni Brusca, and he revealed how their power stretched from the backstreets of Palermo to the highest levels of business and politics. His articles didn't just inform, they embarrassed. Francese revealed the Mafia's role in massive construction contracts, uncovering billions in shady deals that enriched mobsters and corrupted officials. He was admired for his honesty, but those revelations came with a price. On the night of January 26, 1979, Francese left his office and headed home. As he approached his house in Palermo, gunmen were waiting. They opened fire, killing him on his doorstep. The killing stunned Sicily, but at first it faded quickly from headlines, another casualty in a violent era. It took more than 20 years before justice arrived. In 2001, Rina, Brusca, and other Mafia leaders were convicted of ordering Francese's murder. The verdict confirmed what many had long suspected. Francese was silenced for daring to shine too much light into the Mafia's shadows. Mario Francese wasn't just a journalist, he was a public figure who turned reporting into a weapon. And for that, the Mafia decided his story would end in blood. By the early 1990s, Giuseppe Beppe Alfano had become a well-known journalist and television commentator in Sicily. He was sharp, outspoken, and unafraid to investigate where others stayed silent. His columns and broadcasts dug into the Mafia's drug networks, its infiltration of local government, and even the names of bosses who thought themselves untouchable. For ordinary Sicilians, Alfano was a voice of truth. For the mob, he was a dangerous liability. On the evening of January 8, 1993, Alfano's courage caught up with him. As he drove through the streets of Bartolona Pozzo di Gotto, assassins ambushed his car. A bullet struck him in the head, killing him instantly. The murder shocked Italy, once again proving that the Mafia didn't just silence rivals in back rooms or deserted alleys. They could eliminate public figures in broad daylight. Investigators later revealed that Alfano had uncovered sensitive information linking local bosses to larger Cosa Nostra operations. His reporting had cut too close, exposing a network that thrived on secrecy. Eventually, Mafia boss Giuseppe Gulotti was convicted for ordering the assassination. Alfano's death was more than a personal tragedy. It was a direct assault on press freedom and a chilling reminder that even fame and visibility couldn't shield someone from the mob's reach. To this day, Beppe Alfano is remembered as a martyr of truth, a man whose celebrity status in journalism wasn't enough to save him when the Mafia marked him for death. From Hollywood starlets to Italian journalists and even wrestling icons, these stories prove that fame was never enough to keep the Mafia at bay. Thelma Todd, Spangler, Pasolini, Dino Bravo, and others all learned the same chilling truth. Celebrity offered no protection when secrets, power, and profit were on the line. The mob didn't care about stardom, only control, and those who stood in the way were erased. Each case is a reminder that the Mafia's shadow stretched far beyond back alleys. It reached into the worlds of film, television, sports, and media, leaving behind a trail of silence and blood. Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more forgotten Hollywood tales.